Excel accounting practice problem. Pay employees part 2. Get ready because we're about to excel. Here we are in our Excel worksheet. In prior presentations, we put together the worksheet from a blank sheet, now entering transactions into it. If you have access to it, there's 2 tabs on down below, the example tab and the practice tab. Practice tab starting out where we left off last time. The example tab in essence being an answer key. Let's take a look at it now. Last time we entered our ledger on the right-hand side. We're going to use that now in order to make the journal entry all the way on the right, looking something like this. We're actually going to change it up a little bit. This would be what it would look like if we enter just one transaction for the full register. And we're going to change it probably with your example tab, if you have access to the worksheet, to show 2 separate transactions for the 2 separate individuals with regards to this journal entry. So let's take a look at what that would look like. Go into the practice tab. Within the practice tab, we'll do some cleanup work because I have everything open at this point. Putting my cursor on the skinny and going all the way to column A, right click and hide those items. Then I'm going to go all the way to the register. I'd like to hide everything so that I can see the register right next to the trial balance. I don't need to copy and paste, by the way, the ending balance to the beginning balance because there's nothing in there. We didn't enter anything last time, so we have the same balances there. I'm going to put my cursor on the AJ and go all the way over till we get to our ledger and try to hide everything in between. So we're going to go all the way to the skinny here, and then I'm going to right click and hide all that stuff. So now we can work on just basically our journal entry that we have over here. Remember where we left off last time, we entered this ledger. We've got our 2 employees that we're paying. We can think of it on an employee by employee basis or by a total basis here. So in other words, let's do some underlining. Let's underline these. Let's underline these. So if I thought about it in total, I can think about in total, I can enter one transaction or journal entry, imagining that this was outside of our system, which would be the gross pay, would be the expense of this amount, the 6983, FIT, Social Security, Medicare withheld, that would be payroll liabilities then, and then the net pay, meaning decrease to the checking account being this item. However, if you're entering this using like a QuickBooks system and running the payroll within QuickBooks, you're going to need the more detail to provide to the employees. And it's also nice to have the 2 checks that will be in there with 2 separate amounts so that you can more easily reconcile. So we're going to put these in as 2 individual transactions for each employee. Same kind of idea. Here's going to be the payroll expense, withholdings, these 3, and then the net pay. So let's see what that would look like. If I go back over, we're going to have to add some accounts as we do this. So this is going to be as of 1/30, the end of the month. We're going to need an expense account down here. So I need like payroll expense, which I'll put under the office supplies. I'm going to try to keep it in alphabetical order. If I mess up, I apologize. But generally the default, if it was in like QuickBooks and something, if you're not using account numbers, the ordering would then default to alphabetical order within the categories. So I'm going to insert, right click and insert some cells and push down the cells so we have them right there. This is going to then be the payroll expense 0 to start out with. So there's our first account. Payroll expense is going to be here on the debit. That's going to be, I'm going to put this for the first person, which is going to be Adam. Adam, that's the first thing that was ever said between man and woman. Madam, my name is Adam. Okay, stop. We're going to then go to the next. I'm going to make that green so we could see it better. In any case, then we're going to go down to the liability down here. We need a liability for the payables, all the payables. So I'm going to be putting my cursor down here. I'm going to right click and insert the liabilities and push these down. This is what we are taking from the employees or not giving to them that they earned because the government's making us ability 0. And that's going to be the payroll liability, which is going to be, I'm going to say negative SUM of, and I'm just going to group them all into one account. You could make 3 separate payroll account liability accounts for FIT, Social Security, and Medicare, or you could just use one. Or oftentimes people will group together FIT and Medicare as FICA taxes, you might hear them called. but I'm just going to put them all into one liability account, adding up to that. And then you can either use the negative sum or plug formula, which would give you that, or you can pull this number from what the net check should be over here. The amount that's coming out of the checking account should be the same thing. Adding this up, we get to 0. That's going to be the checking account. Checking. And we'll then indent that. So if I was to record that, it would look something like this. The payroll expense. Notice I don't have payroll taxes expense down here. And you might say, well, some of those are payroll taxes, but they're not our taxes. They're the employee's taxes. So they're really just payroll expenses to us. We will have payroll tax expense, but they're not there yet. We're not there yet. The taxes that we're going to have to pay are on behalf of the earnings of the employee. So we're going to have the 4583. That's going to make a decrease to the net income. We've got the payroll liability then. Payroll liability. That's going to be right here in AG 15 equals the 1011, bringing that up to 1011. The checking account on the top is in AG 4 equals the 3572. There we have it. So there's the typical kind of payroll for one employee transactions that we have. Not too bad, but remember, we only have the half. We don't have any state taxes. We don't have any federal unemployment taxes. We don't have any of the requirements of reporting this to the employee on their payroll stub right now as we enter the transaction, both on a check by check and year to date. And we're not dealing with any of the caps on things like the FUTA, the Federal Unemployment Tax Act, CAC, or the Social Security cap, or the added amounts for Medicare, which again, none of those laws are difficult in and of themselves, but you pile them together and you've now made a complex thing, right? You've made complexity. Complexity has been made from simplicity through the aggregation of simple things that you just kept piling on top of each other. So now we're going to then say, let's do it again for the next one. You got a moving landscape. There's a moving landscape. Okay, so now we're going to go then to this one and do the same thing. Same thing for Erica on 130. We've got payroll expense down here, payroll expense. We've got payroll liability. We've got the checking account. Let's do some indentation. Go into the alignment and indent. We're going to say the payroll expense then for Erica is going to be that 2400. The liability is going to be, let's do the liability negative sum. Negative sum to make it a credit of the FIT, the Social Security, and the Medicare. Enter. There we have that. Checking negative sum plug formula is the 1856, which should match the 1856 we have here as well, which it does. And then if I was to add these two together, these two, that adds up to the 6983, which is the same as this 6983. So we could see you could do this with one journal entry. Like if I add these two together, that adds up to the 1554, because those are the same two numbers as this whole thing, 1554. And then if I add these two together, that's going to add up to the 5429, which adds up to the 5429 over here as well. So that's done. Let's go ahead and post it out. Let's do some posting. Did I post it yet? I don't think I did. So we're going to do this one. That's in the payroll expense. Something's in it. We'll just use the keyboard this time. No mouse. No mouse. F2 plus F2. Going up to that 2,400. There we have it. Payroll liability then. Next one. We're going to be right here in AG15. F2 plus F2. We got that 544. Then we're looking checking account. Scrolling up to the good old checking account. Checking it out. F2 plus F2. And bringing it on down to the 1856. All right. So then that should put us back in balance. Then as we generate the payroll, we're going to have our payroll liabilities that are accumulated upwards. These are the payroll taxes that we have. These are taxes that we have to pay over and above the employee payroll. So you might break them out then into a separate expense account called payroll taxes. This is something that many people get confused because they don't really understand the difference between the taxes that are paid by the employee and the employer. So they have problems reconciling forms 941, for example, and the W2 forms and W3 forms to what we have in the accounting system, because the taxes between the employee and employer portion often throw people off because they don't understand, the fact that on the expense side of things, we're going to include normally the taxes paid by the employee in their expense account here, and then the payroll taxes that we pay over and above will be broken out, that we have to pay over and above their payroll. So we're going to add another account here. This will be called payroll tax expense. So selecting these 4 cells, right click and insert. Shifting down, we're going to call this payroll tax expense 0, and then copying down the summing across. So that's simply going to be then, as of the same point, 130 payroll tax expense, and the other side's going to go to the same liability. So the liability is still going up. It's we're going to put that into the same account because we're paying the same people, the Fed, but it's being accumulated by our portion and the employee portion, which will typically be broken out, and you can see on the income statement as 2 separate expense accounts. So alignment and indent, the amount then is going to be equal to the total for our payroll taxes. I'm not going to break it out by the 2 employees here. Why? Because I don't need to so much, because it's not touching the checking account at this point in time. So I don't need to reconcile it the same way I do up here, which I'd like to reconcile the 2 checks that are coming out of the checking account. We're not going to pay this until a future point in time has not yet hit the checking account. So there's not a whole lot of added value to put it in there by 2 separate amounts, although that's the way you would probably see it in an accounting system if you were processing the payroll in the system. But here we're going to be doing it outside. And remember, that's the 2 ways that you could do payroll. You could process it in the system, have a whole bunch of that detail is going to be tracked in your system like a QuickBooks system, or you can have a third party process it. They have all the detail in their system, and then you put in what you need to put in to make your financial statements correct for financial reporting purposes. Okay, so there's our debit and credit. Let's then post it out. So we got the payroll expense on down below, the payroll tax expense, I should say, because that's the right thing to say. That's more proper. And then we got the payroll liability up top, payroll liability, F2 plus F2, adding the payroll liability. I think that does it. So that does it. Now we got to add this stuff to the GL. Notice that the payroll liability now adds up to the 2099, which matches the 2099 here. Our total expenses should be tying out to that 6983. The payroll tax 474 is the 474. Okay, so let's unhide some cells and add some GLs. We're going to put our cursor on AH on over to ER, AH to right click and unhide. And so now we're going to then say we got to add, what do we got to add here? We got to add, let's highlight this one. This is the one I'm working on. Let's do one thing at a time here. One thing at a time. Payroll expense. I'm going to add both of these. I'm going to do 2 things at a time. I'm going to add both of these under the office supplies, after office supplies. So let's go on over to office supplies. So there's office supplies. I need 2 accounts right over here. So I'm going to put my cursor on the skinny, go on over to the BZ, like a B, and then Control C, cop, and then we're going to paste it in the skinny, or not paste it. We're going to insert the copied cells right there, and then I'm going to delete the activity, and then we'll rename these. This is going to be payroll expense, which I'll pull into it from the actual account over here, so I'm less likely to misspell it, or if I misspell it, the same misspelling will be throughout the whole thing. It'll be consistent misspelling. If I misspell, I want it to be consistent misspelling. So then we're going to say down here, this is going to be the payroll tax expense. And then we'll record this on out. On CB5, we're going to say this happened on 130. We're in CC5 equals left on over to hit that wall. Scrolling down to the payroll expense 4583 and enter. There we have it. Now I also need to add these two new cells to my check number. My check number over here, because I should be out of balance, and I'm not out of balance. I bet I'm not out of balance. So this one needs to be out of balance, and it's not. So I'm going to double click on it. Plus at the end of it, scrolling back on over to the payroll stuff, paying on a roll. And there we have it. So I'm going to add this one and then plus and add this one because we're going to do that payroll tax and enter. So now we're out of balance about that 4583, and we need to record then the liability. We got to add the liability though because we don't have that account. It's after the loan payable. So after the loan payable here. So this one, all I need to do is move this one down and then put the payroll liability up above it. So I'm going to take this one, grab it. I can say Control X. Oh, what was that? Control X, cutting it, not copying it, and pasting it down here, cutting it. That's the same as moving it. And then I'm going to copy and paste it back up top, and then delete the stuff in it, and then delete this stuff in it. So now I'm going to make this one. This is going to be our payroll liability. Payroll liability, which is this item. There we have it. This is going to be on 130. And the amount then is going to be equal to picking up the 1011. There we have it. I got to add that to my check figure. That needs to be added to the check fig. So we're going to say plus. And then we're going to go on over here and say that we got this one now. Even though I moved this one, it's still there, that one down below. So that looks good. Enter. Still not in balance till we record the last one, but it looks like that's what we're out of balance by. That seems right. Then to the checking. The trusty checking account, where all the action is. We're in AK 21 equals the 3572. Bringing that to 90,998. That should put us back in balance, but we haven't yet tied out to the income statements until we do the rest of them and add those accounts to the income statement check number. Let's make this one back to blue. If you don't have that blue, it's in the more item standard. There's the blue. Excel is fun guy blue. That's the one. And so then we'll add this one. So now we're on the payroll expense again. I made it green, so our eyeballs go right to it when we post it. So we got the payroll expense all the way to the right. Assets, liabilities, equity, payroll expense. We're in cell CB6 130. We're in cell CC6 equals left all the way back to the wall, picking up that 2,400. There we have it. So now we're at the 6963. Scrolling all the way back, we're out of balance, of course, up top now. And we then have the 6963 is the amount on the trial balance now. So then the loans payable. The loan payable is here. So that's the other. This isn't the loan payable. This should be payroll liability. Sorry about that. Payroll liability. So payroll liability. And it's going to be then scrolling over in a liability area. Sales tax, payroll liability on 130. We're in cell BM6 equals left to the wall. Scrolling down to that 544. Bringing it up from 1011 by 544 to 1554. That 1554 should also be on the trusty TB on the payroll liability. Not yet, because we have to add one more. Sorry about that. It's not there yet. We're getting close, though. And then we've got the checking account. So checking account, finally. That's going to be down here where the action is, 130. This is going to be equal to the checking account of the 18556, bringing that down to the 89141. We're back in balance up top. Let's do the last one. Finally. And we're going to make that blue. Now, I'm not going to make this one green because we don't need to because it's the last one. Payroll expense. That's the other account that we added. Scrolling back up top, payroll expense all the way to the right. Looking for the payroll expense. There it is. We're in CB7, 130. We're in CC7 equals left till we get all the way to the wall again. Scrolling down, we're picking up that 474, 474. So now we're up to the 7457, which should now match, I believe, what's on the GL. We're out of balance. I'm sorry, on the trial balance. We're out of balance in the GL. The trial balance is now at, what did I just record on that? The payroll expense. Hold on a second. Scrolling back on over, checking it out. Payroll expense. I think I recorded it to the wrong area. I put it into the liability. Stop. Undo that. Undo that. My bad. I'm a little tired. It's been a half hour here. 20 minutes in. Equals CC20 equals left to the wall. Let's try it again. Ultra vase. Por favor. Do it right this time. Do it right this time. 474. Okay, that should match what's on the trial balance. So there we got it. See? No problem. And then we're on the payroll liability. Payroll liability, which is going to be here. So it's going to be in the same location on the G to the L. Payroll liability. There it is on 130. So we're in BM7 equals left to the wall again. Scrolling down. There's the 474 and enter. So that then brings us up to the 2029. That 2029 now should match what is on the trial balance, and it does. And we're back in balance. We're not tying out then this number to this number for the net income yet. So we got to add those to our check figure to do so. Double clicking on it. We're going to add to the end of this those two accounts we added, which was payroll and tax and expense. Payroll tax liability, and we'll payroll tax and expense. These two over here on the income statement, that one plus this one, and enter. And I think that should do it. Our check figure's back in balance. Net income from adding up the GL accounts, tying out to the net income on the trial balance. You can see the impact on net income from the payroll tax expense and the payroll expense and the tax expense. Whew. So that was longer than expected there. So then in future presentations, of course, we got this in our checking account at two different numbers here. So that will then show up when we do our bank reconciliation a bit more easily, as the two things will show up as two different amounts. That's why we kind of broke it out into two items.